Good morning, students. Welcome to session number 4 of the chapter A Sunny Morning, written by Quintero brothers. In session 3, we have seen Don Gonzalo and Donna Laura beginning a friendly conversation. Don Gonzalo had offered her a pinch of snuff, and that brought peace between them. So they start conversing in a friendly tone. Both of them discuss poetry. Campomore's poems were read by Don Gonzalo, and earlier she had made fun of his eyesight. Now Laura feels sympathy for this old man who reads out with great difficulty. She tells him that she has got keen eyesight, and she proves it by taking the book from him and reading the poem 20 Years Pass, He Returns by Campamore. But while giving back the book, she tells the audience that she was not actually reading, which means she really had problem with her eyesight, but she wanted to just hide this fact, and she knew that poem by heart. So both of them have love for poetry. He explains to her about his travels of some time back. He tells her that he was very much familiar with Esperanza, Zorilla, Becker, all those Spanish realists. He was even a great composer, he told her. And later, when he mentioned about Valencia, Laura was trying to evoke something in her memory. She suddenly remembered a villa near Valencia, which was located near the seashore, hidden between orange and lemon trees. And she told him that she lived some years in a villa in Valencia, and if that villa was still present, definitely it would have her memories. And Gonzalo also was very much familiar with the name of that villa, Maricela. His memory is also kindled, and he tries to remember the most beautiful woman he had ever seen in his life, and he tries to remember her name, and finally he got her name, Laura Lorente. Laura is very much astonished because, see, right now both of them are in Madrid, and they did not have any kind of relationship with each other, but they have quite common memories of their youth. So they are trying to bring something from their memory of young age. I think we stopped in the last class over here, and from here we are going to start. It's Laura's time now to speak something. She was slightly shocked, slightly surprised when he mentioned the name Laura Lorente. And the lady, the character is presented to us by Quintero brothers as Donna Laura. The first name is the same. So we can imagine there is a chance that Donna Laura and Laura Lorente, both of them refer to the same person. Now, Laura, recovering herself, nothing. You reminded me of my best friend. She was quite startled when he mentioned Laura Lorente. Suddenly, she comes back from her past and she says, no, suddenly I was reminded, I thought of my best friend. She just wanted to tell this old man that Laura Lorente was her best friend. For some reason, she hides the fact that she herself is Laura Lorente. Gonzalo, how strange? That's really strange. We know Varicella, we know Valencia, we know about Laura Lorente. It's quite strange. Laura, it's strange. She was called the Silver Maiden. And you know how my friend was known in the locality? Everybody used to call her the Silver Maiden. See, she must have been the most beautiful creature in this world. That's why she was called the Silver Maiden. Gonzalo, precisely, the Silver Maiden, exactly. I too remember she was called Silver Maiden. By that name she was known in that locality. I seem to see her as if she were before me now, at that window with the red roses. Do you remember that window? And now Gonzalo brings in a few images from the past and tells her, even now even after 50 years, I still remember her. You know where she was standing? She used to stand at the window of her room and she would have roses in her hand. I just feel that she's still at the window just before me holding roses. Do you remember that window? Somewhere in his mind he has a feeling that this old woman sitting in front of him might have been the same Laura Lorente. So do you still remember that window? He's asking her. Laura says, yes, I remember. It was the window of her room. She says, yes, I can remember. I do have that image of her standing at the window with the roses. And that was the window of her room. She stresses the fact that Laura Lorente is her best friend. Gonzalo, she spent many hours there. I mean, in my day. Laura, sighing, and in mine too. So Gonzalo mentions that many hours she had spent there holding roses in her hand. Whenever I used to pass that way, I used to see this woman over there. And Laura says, even in mine too. Even when I was young, I still have the image of this silver maiden standing there with a bunch of roses. And she sighs. You sigh when you have a regret over what is lost. You pine for what is lost and naturally a sigh comes out. So she sighs at what is being lost. Laura is no longer a young maiden now. And now Gonzalo says, she was ideal. Ideal means perfect. Fair as a lily, jet black hair and black eyes with an uncommonly sweet expression. He tries to remember the image of the most beautiful woman he had ever met in his life, Laura Lorente. He says, she was fair as a lily, so fair. And black hair, she had jet black hair, long hair, black eyes, and always a sweet expression in her eyes. No one can forget her. She seemed to cast radiance wherever she was. Her figure was beautiful, perfect. And she seemed to cast radiance. Cast radiance is, she used to attract people towards her. Some people have got this quality of attracting people towards them. Laura was one such woman. Everybody, she was so attractive, so pretty, so beautiful, so perfect a figure that everybody's attraction was towards her. And then he says, what forms of sovereign beauty God models in human clay. Such a beauty had been perfectly made by God in human clay. And she was such a golden beauty, I would say. And this is again a reference to the saying that according to Christianity, God made Adam, the first man, out of clay. After making him out of clay, he breathed life into Adam. When he found that Adam was lonely, he wanted to present him a companion. Out of his ribs, out of Adam's rib, he created Eve, the first woman. So it's believed that God is the creator. He has modeled on this human clay and he has come out with the perfect figure, and it was Laura Lorente. She was a dream. And then he says, she was just like a dream. Now, what is the speciality of dreams? You see dreams when you sleep, and when you wake up, you'll have the memory of that dream so fresh in you. But by the time passes, by the time it is around 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, some parts of the dream must have vanished. By afternoon, still more might have vanished, and by evening, you will only have some trails of the dream here and there. So you are never able to hold the dream within you. And again, you try hard to achieve your dream. Sometimes you may be successful, sometimes you may not be. Gonzalo says that she was almost a kind of dream. I always wanted to hold her, but she just went, just like a trailing cloud, she just disappeared. Almost a dream she was. Laura, aside, if you but knew that dream was now by your side, you would realize what dreams come to. So now in an aside, she tells the audience, my dear old man, you remember Laura Lorente. You say that she's a dream, but the same dream is by your side right now. And you can have the thought that your dream can be materialized. Your dream is materialized. The same dream is beside you. I may not be as beautiful as that Laura Lorente, the silver maiden. Still, I am the dream that you are speaking of. That's an aside to the audience. Very clearly she gives the message that she tells the audience that she is Laura Lorente. She wants to tell the man, but for some reason she does not say that. Now aloud, she was very unfortunate and had a sad love affair. So loudly, for Gonzalo's sake, she says, you know, my friend, she was so unlucky because she had a love affair and that did not materialize. So sad. Very sad. They look at each other. Now for the second time, they look at each other intently. Gonzalo might have expected Laura to say that I am the same old silver maiden. And she might have expected him to say that, no, I know you. So here, Gonzalo says it was very sad. Even both of them are aware of the sad love story of Laura. That's what we understand right now. Laura, did you hear of it? Do you know about her story? Yes, I know. The ways of providence are strange. You know, the ways of providence refers to the ways of God. You don't know what fate has in store for us. The ways of God, the ways of fate. It's so strange. And in an aside, she says, Gonzalo. She now, without any doubt, states that it is Gonzalo who is sharing the bench with me. The gallant lover in the same affair. Yes, I know the story. I know about the gallant. Gallant means brave, heroic. She had a lover. He was so heroic. He was so brave. I remember him. The duel. Do you remember the duel also? Now, duel refers to a contest or a fight between two people using deadly weapons. During those times in 18th, 19th century, it was quite common to settle a matter, to settle a point of honor, you could fight a duel. So she was asking, do you know about duel? Gonzalo, precisely the duel. Exactly, I remember the duel also. I know about it. The gallant lover was my cousin of whom I was very fond. Now Gonzalo expected Laura to say that she is Laura and she did not say. So she said Laura was her best friend. Now Gonzalo says, you know, the gallant lover of Laura, the silver maiden, was his cousin. The heroic lover was my own cousin. They produce fake identities here. They bring in fake identities here. No, just to tell us the story of the sad love affair. Laura, oh yes, a cousin? Oh, was this gallant horseman your cousin? My friend told me in one of her letters the story of that affair, which was truly romantic. You know how romantic their relationship was? No, my friend has written letters to me, and through the letters she told me she had a romantic love affair with a gallant horseman. Your cousin, passed by on horseback every morning down the rose path under her window and tossed up to her balcony a bouquet of flowers which she caught. You know how it went on? She would be waiting at the window of her room. There was a passage of roses or a passage lined by rose flowers under her window. The horseman, the gallant lover, would come on a horseback, riding a horse he would come. And from there he would toss up means throw up, he would throw up to the balcony where she is standing a bouquet of roses, and she would catch that bouquet. So how beautiful, so innocent, so romantic. Gonzalo, And later in the afternoon, the gallant horseman would return by the same path and catch the bouquet of flowers she would toss him. Am I right? So now Gonzalo is asking, and what happens in the afternoon? Morning, he would toss up the bouquet of flowers to her. And afternoon, as he comes back in the afternoon, she would toss bouquet of roses back to him. So probably it is a method by which they were exchanging their love, they were exchanging their thoughts, they were exchanging letters. And so beautiful, right? I also know about it, Gonzalo says. Laura, yes. They wanted to marry her to a merchant whom she would not have. And you know what her parents had decided? They wanted her to marry a merchant. She said, no, I don't want to marry the merchant. Gonzalo, and one night when my cousin waited under her window to hear her sing, this other person presented himself unexpectedly. And still I remember that one day she had promised him to sing. One night she had promised him that she would sing. So he came without anybody noticing him. He was waiting under her window. And then what happened? The merchant presented himself. The merchant appeared there and insulted your cousin. There was a quarrel and later a duel. Just see what happened. The merchant comes to the scene. He finds out that gallant lover is hiding under the window, and he insulted the gallant horseman. And then they decided that they would fight. In order to settle this matter, it was a question of honor. So in order to settle this matter, they decided to have a duel. And now Gonzalo, yes. At sunrise, on the beach, and the merchant was badly wounded. My cousin had to conceal himself for a few days and later to fly. I still remember. How can Gonzalo remember all these incidents so specifically? Because it is Gonzalo who is the gallant horseman. So he says, on the beach, one morning, the next morning, the duel was fought. And what happened? The horseman defeated the merchant and the merchant was wounded. Though he could wound the merchant, since it was against the law, he had to hide himself. He had to, go away from that place. You remember the duel in Romeo and Juliet, which later resulted in the tragedy. Laura, you seem to know the story well. And so do you. So Laura is asking, how do you know the story so well? The merchant was wounded and he had to go away just for one reason, because the merchant's family was so influential. And probably the horseman, the gallant lover, he came from a normal family, an ordinary family. So he won't be able to escape from the law. So that is why he had to hide for some days. Laura is asking him, how do you know the story so well? And Gonzalo says, you also know that, though it happened to your friend. I have explained that a friend repeated it to me. Laura tells him, you remember I told you already, it happened to my best friend. She had told me this. As my cousin did to me. Aside, this is Laura. So now he says, the same thing happened to me also. My cousin told the story to me. And in an aside, he says to the audience, this is Laura. I understand this old woman, so refined in her character, sharing the bench with me. She is none other than the silver maiden of my youth, Laura Lorente. Now Laura says in an aside, why tell him? He does not suspect. So Laura has a feeling that I should tell him that I am Laura Lorente. But then she rethinks. He does not have any suspicion about me. At least he should ask me, are you Laura? But he did not ask me. He does not have any suspicion about me. So why should I tell him that I am Laura? Let him ask me first. Gonzalo in an aside. She is entirely innocent. She doesn't doubt me. She doesn't think that I am Gonzalo. So how can I tell her? So now the story of the gallant horseman and the silver maiden had been told to the audience by Donna Laura and Don Gonzalo taking their turns. So they completed, it's not just one version of the story. Half of the story is told to us by Laura, half of the story is told by Don Gonzalo. From this it is very clear, it is the same people who are right in front of us on the stage sitting at the park in Madrid. So here I stop for today, and in the next class we will see what happened to their conversation. Did they tell each other, did Laura mention to Gonzalo that she was the silver maiden, or how does their meeting end? So let's see these things in the next class. Thank you.